All right, welcome back. So the real purpose of this whole unit is to learn about the code Objective-C. The last video, it was busy work, right? I mean, we had to break the connection in the storyboard and make it to the Objective-C view controller. We had to remake all those outlets, but to be honest, that actually was pretty similar to what it was before. We're really interested in the Objective-C language. So let's go ahead and dive back into our project, and let's just kind of start looking around. So we've got this .h file with all these connections to outlets and actions. If you look at this, you'll notice that there's a lot of differences. For one, you see a lot of star symbols here, so to show that it's a pointer. And if you compare these to the connections that we did in Swift, I mean, they're not that different, right? I mean, it uses slightly different words, slightly different syntax, but the concepts are right on. So what we really want to do is we want to start making some code to see things happen. The first bit of code we'll add is in Swift, we did some logs, and we're going to go ahead and do some logs here. So the logs, instead of just saying slider changed, what we want to do is we want to print out the value of the sliders. And the way this works in Objective-C is that you always have to say what the string is, which leads with an @ symbol, and then you have placeholders. Here it's a %f, and what I'm going to put in here is I'm going to put in the red slider dot value. And then always things have to finish with semicolons as well. So with just this, I could watch the red slider as it moved. So as the red slider moves, you can see its value changes from 0 all the way up to 1. So you can see that there's a lot of differences there in how the syntax works, but the concept really wasn't hard. The thing that kind of freaks people out is this @ symbol, and the reason you have to do that is Objective-C is a superset of C, meaning anything C did is still valid. And if you put just quotes on in C, that would be like declaring an array, which is something different. So you have to put an @ at the beginning here, and that makes it an NS string is what it really does there. And you'll note that there is no string interpolation. I mean, that was a new thing that Swift added. You have to use kind of this like string formatting. And then if you wanted to print them all out, you could. I mean, it's not hard. So here I could just add a green, and then I could add the green slider value. And I won't make you watch me type it, but you can add them all. All right, there I've got them all typed. Hopefully I didn't make too many typos. And so if I run it now and I change these values, you can see that it prints out all of these different messages. You'll notice that whenever you do NS logs, you get a timestamp. You also get like the project name, and this is like a thread identifier. And these things come for free with NS logs, kind of whether you want them or not. But there you go. We've printed all the different values. Now what we wanted to do is not actually print the values. We wanted to create a function called UpdateView, and we wanted to call that function. Let's go ahead and create UpdateView just to see what creating a function looks like in Objective-C. And the way it works is you have to start with either a hyphen or minus sign, whichever you want to call it, or a plus symbol. A plus symbol would mean that it's a class method, so it doesn't act on an instance, it's a class method. And a minus sign is what you normally use, and that just means it's a regular old instance method. Here we're going to call a function UpdateView. You'll notice that there are no parentheses after it. That's because the way you pass parameters into a function in Objective-C is different. You've kind of got a hint about that up here, and we'll talk about it in great gory detail later. And then the way you call a function, so you'd kind of expect it to be, well, I mean, you would expect it to be UpdateView, right? That's what you would expect. That's very wrong. One thing is, I'll tell you, you have to call it on self, so you might think, hey, I'll call it like this. That's also very wrong. Turns out Objective-C is based on a language called Smalltalk, and the way you call it is you say, like, what is the target, which is self, and then you say a space, and then you call the function UpdateView. So it's kind of like a sentence. It's like self UpdateView, and then you surround it in square brackets to say, you know, here's the Smalltalk expression, self UpdateView, and then of course you end it with a semicolon. So it's kind of a crazy thing to use brackets, but you'll get used to it with time. So there is a function call and making a function, but I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. I actually want to write UpdateView first. So if you remember what UpdateView did before, is it set the sliders to be a certain value, and then it called UpdateView. I'm going to cheat. I'm just going to copy it, and I'm going to paste Swift code into Objective-C. That, of course, works out very poorly, but it's easy enough to translate it. So UpdateView calling the function, I'll translate that one first. That is self-UpdateView. Red slider.value, I mean, the first thing these all need is they need semicolons. So that's one change. And then the other thing they need is you need to say self-dot in front of them. So any properties in Objective-C, you have to say self-dot. So that was actually a pretty easy translation there. And note, if you run it with that change, it will have a visible difference. Those are the starting values of the sliders. Note that they don't update this view at all. They still just print a log message, but we'll fix that. Speaking of this log message, let's get rid of it. We're about to write UpdateView. UpdateView, we could do the same game as what we did before. It's like, what did we do in Swift? Well, the things we did in Swift, we set the text on all the labels, and we used a string formatter to do that with 2 decimal points. So we're going to have to do that. So that's going to be, same concept but different. And then we set the background color on the view. So those are the 2 tasks that we want to do. So I'm going to start with updating a label. So I'm going to say self.redLabel.text. So it's the same as it was before. It's just that now I had to add self to the front. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to call a class method on NSString, which is called string with format. So I'm just going to go ahead and let the compiler help me autocomplete that. And the format that I'm going to use is a %.2f. That was actually the same as what we did in Swift. And then just self.redSlider.value. So pretty easy peasy. And then get it to where it fits on one line there. So you can see that we have this bracket that closes at the beginning. So this one is a class method. So it's called on the class NSString. NS, by the way, stands for Next Step. It was the company that Steve Jobs started, which Apple then bought, and a lot of their stuff is based on Next Step. So you see NS a lot in Objective-C, which is really just kind of hysterical. So there's the red one, and then we'll have to do it the same thing for the other 3. Cool, there we go. Hopefully we were all able to successfully replace the words green, blue, and alpha. And now if you run it, it will actually update the values over here, which makes it a lot more fun as far as apps go, which is kind of neat. And so you can see it wasn't terrible, right? I mean, we have some more brackets involved with our language, but it's really not that different than what we did in Swift. And then the last thing we want to do is we want to update the actual view of that color view itself. So we're just going to set the color on the background. Now before, what we did is we created a UI color, and we're actually going to do that same thing again here. The way we declare a variable, though, it's kind of easier to kind of see it and then talk about it, is you say what the class is and you alloc it. That allocates the memory space for it. You may remember malloc commands if you did a lot of C. And then there's an init after you've reserved the memory space. And then the init here is init with red, which is a CG float. One nice thing about Objective-C is that it doesn't yell at you the way Swift did about it being the wrong type of float. So that's good. So it's a little easier in that regard, right? So I mean, there are differences. So we're just going to go through here and we're going to say all the slider values. So the last one is the alpha slider.value, and it wraps onto as many lines as you need. If you wanted to, Objective-C does do this thing for you where it lines up the colons. So you can see that what it does for you is it lines up the colons, which is kind of neat. It makes it look a little bit cleaner. I didn't quite have the screen real estate to make it look good, but I'm going to call that good enough. So now if you run it, it should actually be a fully functional app. So you should be able to take the sliders around, and you should be able to see it working just like it did before. So this is kind of our comparison to Swift to Objective-C. We've got this thing working, so you can see that there's some differences with how string works, and that there's no string interpolation. You have to have @ symbols. You always have to have semicolons. If you looked at the function creation and then the function call, there's brackets now, so it's different, but it still works. The view did load was actually very, very similar, so that one was fine. And then the update view, there were just all these little differences of things that we had to do. But it really wasn't too bad. It's just a new language. All right. Once you've got that going, make sure you've killed the log messages, and you should be able to run this thing on any iPhone. You can run it in portrait or landscape. I'll go ahead and run it on, heck, an iPhone 6 here, and it should look good on an iPhone 6, and that's because of the constraints that we made last time, right? So I'm not really worried about those, but they should still be present. So here it is on an iPhone 6. If I rotate it to landscape, it should look pretty good in landscape as well. All right, assuming you're taking this class for credit, go ahead and submit your work on Moodle, and you're all set. All right, see you next time.